Okay. First of all, I want to be makir tov to the Rebbetzin Fuchs, for taking the time and the effort to chase me and find me and locate me. So as she mentioned so eloquently, she has the zechus of bringing Mashiach to the 5 towns. Halavai, we should have HaMashiach this week without any further delay. And it's a particular zechus for me to speak to the Amen group, because for me, Amen and answering brachot is very dear to my heart. Being a Sephardi, being brought up where we run after making Amen, and we run after people who make the Berachot HaShachar and want to say Baruch Hu B'Shem Amen. And my wife is particular to make a brachot party every month, just like you do here. We do once a month in our community in Edgware, northwest London. And we have ladies come, and we have brachot. We bring brachot for them, Hagefen, Mazonot, Ha'etz, Ha'adamah, Sha'akol, and we have lists of names. So this is something that we're very familiar with, and to come here to see it in such a way that it's mechubad and people come on a regular basis every day. I was hearing how people come over Rosh Chodesh. I'm mispoiled. I'm absolutely amazed, and this group should be a shining light for the rest of the communities within Klal Yisrael. You know, the Geula comes from the women. I haven't even started my subject yet, but I'll get there. My personal Geula came through women. My mother and Lahavdil ben Chaim, my grandmother, were both instrumental in helping me, in guiding me in my Yiddishkeit. Unfortunately, my father passed away when I was very young, but it was really the influence of the women in my life, and now also my wife, helped mold and guide my Yiddishkeit, and I'm very, very grateful to the women in my life, and it's an honor for me to speak to wonderful Yiddish women, and you should all go Michael L'Chael and continue what you're doing and even improve in what you're doing. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Hanukkah. It's a very strange title, 3 strikes. I'm not going to talk about baseball. I'm going to talk about what was the main difference between the Greeks and the Jews. Where was this battle that took place? I'm not talking about a physical battle necessarily. So, we all know the Greeks are descended from Yefet. Yefet as in one of the sons of Noah. Yefet means, it comes from the word yofi, beauty. So, the Greeks who descended from Yefet were all about beauty. Now, if you think about it, if this was their real point of contention with the Jewish people, it doesn't really sound like a huge battle, like a huge moral battle, that there's an ideology that we're fighting against. We're talking about beauty. Is there anything wrong with beauty? Think about it, right? We have a pasuk in the Torah that we read every day. Zeh keli va'anvehu. This is my God, and I'll beautify him. We buy beautiful etrogim. We make our sukkah beautiful. Any mitzvah we have, we strive to improve it. We make our brachos more beautiful. What's wrong with beauty? So we're just as guilty as the Greeks, it would sound like. L'chora, correct? But there's a huge difference. Because we didn't create a religion out of beauty. That's exactly what the Greeks did. They made an ideology that they made it the focal point of their existence. And they turned it into a religion. And they had gods with a small g who personified this beauty. They had Olympus and Ariadne and all these other Greek characters. Now you would think if somebody has a god, somebody has a hero, somebody has somebody they look up to, you would think that person would be an example to them of how they would lead their lives. But their gods, again with a small g, I'm emphasizing, they were hardly paragons of moral standing. They were all themselves, all their leaders, all the people they looked up to, all involved in debauchery and all the other horrible things. So that's what they turned into their religion. You know, it's like having a cake. You know, you can have a cake, you can have icing on top of the cake, nothing wrong with that. But to make a cake entirely out of icing, that's repulsive, that's horrible, that's overdoing it. But that's exactly what they did. They took the external, they took what was supposed to be just the cherry on the top, and they made a whole ideology out of that sweetness. And you have things which are too sweet, they can really be very, very bad for you. But it went further than that. Because they wanted to give us, they were happy for us to be Jewish. But instead of being Jewish, they wanted us to be Jewish, if you see what I mean. You know, you ever heard of this thing called the chicken soup religion? Where people are, they feel very close to the Masorah, very close to their traditions. But it only extends as far as chopped liver, lox, bagels, you know, hanging out with other Jewish people in, you know, shopping malls. But that was it. It was all the trappings, all the external trappings. The Greeks said, yeah, we're happy with you doing all that. But don't look any further than that. Don't explore any deeper than that. You can have all your culture and all the nice things, the customs, but don't break those boundaries. Everything should be external with no content. It's what we call cultural Judaism. Now, cultural Judaism doesn't last. Cultural Judaism is okay to an extent until the culture changes. Then it gets pushed to the side. It's not something with any longevity. And the Greeks took this to an extent that they actually had they made different gezerot, different edicts against the Jewish people, each one of which was designed to destroy us from the inside out. I'll explain to you what I mean. First of all, and this is very appropriate to this particular group, they made a rule: you can't have any Rosh Chodesh. Abolish Rosh Chodesh. We don't want it to celebrate at the beginning of the month. That needs to be taken away. The second angle of attack was Shabbat. You need to be like us, they said. Our weeks are the same. All our days are the same. We don't want one day that you dedicate to yourselves, because if you have that day you dedicate it to yourselves, then you'll start looking deeper than the external. We don't want that. So it was Shabbat. Then they banned Brit Milah. Now, again, put yourself from the point of view. Imagine if you were an alien and you landed on this planet, and your first sight of mankind was going to a bris milah, and you saw a little small human being lying horizontal on a pillow, about to be hacked by a man with a knife. You would think this is barbaric, this is human sacrifice. You would think this is the worst thing. It's like giving a baby a razor blade. I can't think of anything more cruel and horrible. So if you don't know what you're talking about and you're coming from the outside, you would also have a tremendous problem with such a concept. So they said, this is barbaric, this is inhuman, there's no basis for this in any type of society. We don't want any bris milah by you, no circumcision. And then it got from bad to worse. They said a Jew cannot own property. A Jew cannot have any type of possession that's going to give him any type of power, any type of lien on anybody else's property. You cannot own any property. You cannot have any mammon, that's the word. Mammon means property or belongings. And then there's another common one. They said, whereas we're very happy with you to keep the Bible, to have Bible stories, but we don't need that extra stuff. You know, the stuff I think you call it Mishnah and Talmud. No, that put to one side. We don't want that. Because we have the Bible. We're happy with sharing the Bible stories with you, you know, Joseph and Abraham and Isaac and all that. That's fine, because those are interesting, entertaining stories. I'm quoting them, by the way. So we're happy with all that. But you know, all that other stuff that makes you think, that makes you become a better person, no, we put that to one side. So the Mishnah, that was a big no-no. And if that wasn't enough, they moved on to the women. They said, family purity. What is that all about? Why are you doing these? You have these strange things. We don't want any of that family purity. Just be like us. We don't have any of that stuff. We're very happy. So, no family purity. And they took it even to the degree that they even destroyed the sanctity of marriage, the sanctity of having a husband and one man and one woman. They wanted to have polygamy. It was terrible. But these were all subtle in the beginning. It wasn't a full-on attack. It was very subtle, and it built up over a period of time. So you see what they were attacking. Rosh Chodesh, Shabbat, Brit Milah, Mammon, which is property, Mishnah, which is the oral law, Niddah, and finally Ashes Ish. Attacking from all fronts. If you take those letters, the Rosh Tevot of what I've just mentioned, I have a whiteboard here. I'm going to use the blue as opposed to the pink. I hope you don't mind. Seems it's more close to home. And I'll write the Rosh Tevot. Let's see if I can do this without knocking over my recorder. Chet. Mem. Where am I? Hush. And then, oh, I forgot the shin. There we go. Hashmonah. You see that? That was our response to their edict. We started the Hashmonaim. We started to fight back. And then we had this thing called Hanukkah. Think carefully about the word Hashmonah, first of all. Hashmonah has the word Shemona in it. It sounds like 8. Hanukkah also, it's 8 days long. What event happens, what event has to do with 8 days, apart from Hanukkah? It's a Bris Milah. So Hanukkah immediately has a hint to Bris Milah. Hanukkah lasts 8 days, a week lasts 7 days. That means that inevitably, within Hanukkah, you're going to have a Shabbat. So that answers the Shabbat. We always have a Shabbat during Hanukkah. Hanukkah is at the end of the month, and within Hanukkah is Rosh Chodesh. So we have Rosh Chodesh Tevis in there. That answers Rosh Chodesh. During all 8 days of Hanukkah, but obviously on Rosh Chodesh, but throughout the whole of Hanukkah, we say Hallel. So that answers the Hallel. Rosh Chodesh. During Hanukkah, especially, I mean, when the menorah is alight, women don't work. So that addresses the women as well. They want to attack us from our women, so we put our women on a pedestal. We don't abuse them. And then also to talk about Mammon, to address the point of view of property and belongings. What do we do on Hanukkah? We give our kids gelt, Hanukkah gelt. We spoil them. We fuss over them. We care about our children. We care about our people. So Hanukkah addresses every single gezerah, every single edict that the Greeks wanted to inflict upon us was answered in one shot in 8 days. What message do we have from that? What message does that show us that answers up all of their edicts and how they put beauty over and above everything? It shows us. That whatever they wanted to inflict on us in terms of spirit, we gave them right back. We literally answered on every level right back at them. And let me talk about something, mention something small. Before I get there, I want to show you why I called the shir 3 strikes against the soul. Shall I leave that there? Shall I rub it? I mean, I'll rub it out. Shall I rub it out? I've got enough room. Okay, fine. How do you spell... First of all, how do you say Greece in Lashon HaKodesh? Yavan. Okay. Let's spell Yavan. It's Yud. And we have a Vav. And we have a Nun. Can you see that from here? Okay. Now, if you wouldn't know what this is, you would think these are just 3 lines. Okay, there's a small line, there's a medium line, and there's a long line. Yeah? And notice the position of these 3 lines. This is really what the Greeks were all about. They were about kamut. What does kamut mean? Kamut means amount. They assessed people by their worth, by their physical worth. Are you a small person, a person of modest income, of modest worth, or a medium person, or somebody who's worth a lot of money, who physically has a lot to offer? That's how they judged people. They didn't judge people on their own merit. They looked at people in terms of pounds and pence, or dollars and cents. They had no regard for a person's physical, a person's spiritual worth. That was everything they were about. Now look at these 3 letters. Can you see? They're parallel to each other. They never meet. But that's what they were like. They had no... Each Greek person was like an island unto himself. They had no connection with each other. They were all disparate people. Whereas if a person warms to somebody else and approaches somebody else and you speak to a person from one spirit to another, you have a sense of harmony. You're not disparate. Now look at this. Imagine if you have these 3 and you move them closer together. You would get something like this. That's where you have 3 lines that point together. I just thought of this today. That's like a Hebrew letter shin, correct? But it's also like something else. You ever seen the Chanukah in the Beit HaMikdash? It's like this, and like this, and like, excuse my drawing, and then you have one in the middle here, and then you have that, and then you have that, and then you have that. You see? This is what happens when you have all the lines converging. Yeah? They all converge and they meet at one point. They all have a solid basis. And also, from the solid basis, they all radiate outwards from the same point. How diametrically opposed from Yavan, where each line is separate and they never meet because, you know. And another interesting point about this word Yavan, we talked about how they were all about beauty. How do you say beauty? In Lashon HaKodesh? Yofi, correct. But there's another word, there's a sem in, this is a clue, there's a sem in Harnof called Nevei Yerushalayim. The word noi. Noi means beauty. Na'eh, ma yafeh, ma na'eh. Yeah? Look at this word Yavan. If you reverse the letters, you have, well, this is the final nun. You have nun, you have rov, and you have a yud. That spells noi. So Yavan backwards is noi. They wanted to turn the beauty backwards. They thought they were doing the greatest thing. Beauty, we're all for the external. We want everything to look rosy and wonderful. But they were turning it on its head. They were turning it exactly upside down. I want to discuss a little bit about the history of what really happened during that time. Because you'll think about it in terms of physical might and how there was in fact a war with the Greeks. We were fighting them physically as well. And they had these big elephants, and then we had the Maccabees, who were a small band of zealots who came and fought with them. And yeah, there's a lot of history about this. We don't really talk about this. We don't really make such a fuss about this. Although this was actually quite a very serious consideration when we talk about that time period. Because it was quite, there's actually a Megillah called, I'm not sure what the name is, it's called Megillat. I'm not sure what the name of it is. We don't actually have it in existence now, I believe. But there's a whole history of the wars of the Jews against the Greeks. Why is this not featured? Why is this not a central point when we talk and we celebrate Hanukkah? It sort of gets pushed to the side. And all we talk about is our menorahs and our lights and sufganiyot and latkes and all the other nice trappings that we have. Why don't we talk about history? So many of our other Chagim talk about history. Pesach, Yetziat Mitzrayim, and Purim, and Shavuot, they all have a historical basis. We don't really mention anything about the history of Hanukkah. What about Purim? There's plenty of history there. We have a whole Megillah that we read twice. So why no historical basis? Why do we not talk about the history of the wars of the Jews against the Greeks? So let me take you back to the time that this whole miracle was happening. So we know about the war. We know what happened when the Greeks went into the temple and they caused havoc and they smashed the place up and they did everything to raise the temple to the ground. And of course, all the pachei shemen, all the jugs of oil that had the seal of the Kohen Gadol were all smashed except for one. So, at this point, when the Jewish people came to the temple, there arose a machloket, a difference of opinion between where the Jewish people who went in split into two different factions. One faction claimed something which actually has a halachic basis, because there's a general rule called Tuma Hutra B'tzibur. Let me explain to you what this means. At that time, most of the Jewish people were Tamei Meit. They had the Tumah of the dead. So, when a person becomes Tamei Meit, a person has Tumah attached to him because he's been in contact with a dead body. He's restricted from many mitzvot. He can't bring korbanot. He can't do many things. He has to purify himself. There's a procedure that you have to become tahor. Now, most of the Jewish people at that time were tameh, because there was a lot of death going on, a lot of dead bodies, and tumah was rampant. So this general rule, this halakha called Tumah Hutra B'tzibur, says as follows. It's a rule that says if the majority of the Jewish people at any one time is tamei, then the ordinary rules of tamei d'Rabbanan are dispensed with. So in other words, because of the majority of Jewish people are tamei, you have a dispensation to take advantage of something which is tamei, or to offer korbanot or whatever when in a state of tumah. So it's a dispensation where you would technically be allowed to use oil which is tamei or pasul. So one faction of the Jewish people said to everybody else, they said, look, you see, wherever you look in this Beit HaMikdash, there is oil which has become impure. But because the majority of the Jewish people are already impure, we have a dispensation to use this oil. So do yourselves a favor, pick up any jug of oil, broken or whatever, put it in the menorah, and let's go. Let's do the mitzvah straight away. Why are you waiting? Why are we looking for a needle in a haystack? You're not going to find any pure oil. And to tell you the truth, they had a point. In Lashon HaKodesh we say, Yesh lahem alma lismoch. They had what to rely on. They had a halachic basis for what they were purporting. Now, the other faction of the Jewish people who argued with them, I believe they were the minority, they said, you know, technically you're right. Technically the halacha is on our side and we can use any oil now. It's a desperate time. It's a time when the rules have changed. We have a different halachic basis now. However, we are absolutely fed up. We are absolutely sick to the teeth of being in a state of tumah, of being in a state of impurity. We would rather look and search for even the tiniest drop of pure oil and offer that pure oil up to Hashem than do something where we would do it in a state of impurity. In other words, what they were saying is like this. If we have something, however little it is, to give God in a way that's 100%, we want to do that. We want to give something to Hashem 100%. We're not happy with 99 or 90 or 80. We want to give it. We're not happy with a kamut. We don't want vast amounts of something which is not quite good. Even though the halachot on our side, we'd rather look and search and give Hashem something, give Hashem the best that we can. And with that, they were looking and looking and looking, and people were on the back saying, what are you doing? Why are you wasting your time? And then they found it. And then they found that tiny little pach shemen. That was a reward, because they wanted to give Hashem something which is 100% from their heart. You know, talking about Brit Milah, there's a word karet, which means to cut. I heard something interesting from Rabbi Tatz, because the word karet is, we have koret habrit, we say, to cut the Brit. So the word karet, says Rabbi Tatz, very interesting. He says, what does karet really mean? It means when you cut something from yourself that you cannot do without, and you offer it. You give something of yourself that is indispensable. And you say, you know what, even though I can't function without this thing, I'm giving it to you. I'm cutting something which I desperately need. It doesn't matter. I want you to have it. That's what the Jews did on Hanukkah. They literally looked for that needle in the haystack. They said, we don't care. We're never going to find it. We have to try. And they were rewarded. They found that thing that was indispensable. And that's what they offered to Hashem. And that answers the question of why we don't have a huge whole history and make that the basis of our Hanukkah. We don't talk about these wars and the whole thing. We have nothing to do with it. Why? Because how come we won the war? There was 5 Maccabees fighting against a huge army. That was a massive miracle. That gets relegated to the sidelines? The answer is yes. Because that was God's miracle. Hashem could do anything. If Hashem could split the Yam Suf into 12 channels and, walls of water and all the other miracles that happened when they were walking through and they were taking fruits from the side and the floors like glass, miracle upon miracle. And the 10 plagues. God is very au fait with miracles. He has no problem with Nissim. Yeah? He does them on a daily basis. So, for Hashem that was nothing. But for us to initiate a miracle, for us to go out and do something for Hashem, even though it was like a closed door, that's something, says Hashem, that's worth making a whole festival about. So we base Hanukkah on our miracle, what we did for Hashem, not what Hashem did for us, what we did for Hashem. That, for Hashem, is more valuable than any huge miracle that Hashem can do with no effort whatsoever. That's the real meaning behind Hanukkah. And I want to finish by mentioning something about the timing of Hanukkah. Have you ever thought about this? That Hanukkah is the only festival that begins in the latter part of the month. Because you have Purim, middle of the month. You have Pesach, middle of the month. You have Shavuot, beginning of the month. Nothing goes beyond that middle point of the month. It goes at the end of the month. What's so significant that Hanukkah was placed on the 25th of Kislev, towards the end of the month? You know why? It had a beautiful Chiddush. Because what happens after that 15th day of the month? What happens to the moon? The moon starts getting smaller. It starts waning before it starts waxing. I've always wondered about that word waxing. I only hear the word waxing when we talk about women's waxing. I know what waxing means, but apparently waxing means it gets smaller. Or is that waning? One of the two. Anyway, the moon after the 15th starts getting smaller. What happens when the moon starts getting smaller? Things start getting darker. Things start getting more depressing. Things start seeming more hopeless. And we throw up our hands and say, what are we going to do? The world is going to pot. It's going to waste. Nothing good is happening. At that point, when things seem to be getting more hopeless day after day, we start lighting. And what do? We don't just light one light. As the month gets on, we light more and more and more lights. We start building. We start saying, we don't care if the world is getting smaller. We're turning with more Kedusha. We're going to approach Hashem with more and more holiness. That's why Hanukkah starts at the end of the month. So we're showing Hashem that it doesn't matter what's happening with the world, whether terrible things are happening, we still have that light, which we're lighting with purity. And in Mitzvah Hashem, without any further delay, we're going to have not just Mashiach, like me. We're going to have somebody way, 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 way more important. We're going to put that Hey at the beginning. And we're going to have HaMashiach, Melech HaMashiach, to put an end to all these troubles. So we can see that true light, that Or HaGalus that's at the end of the tunnel, may come speedily and swiftly without any further delay. Thank you for listening and thank you for coming.